Hello, Year 11. Happy Tuesday to you all. Primary storage, secondary storage, storage. That's what we're doing today. Please do introduce yourself. Say hello in the comments. It'd be great to welcome you. I can see we've got a few here, so do at some point check in. Right, I'm going to crack straight on, and let's see if we can remember anything from what we did last week. Let me know if there's any problem with the volume here. So we looked last week at system architecture, which is, I think, quite a technical topic, but it's actually quite a small topic as well. So looking back at last week, I have got a question for you. This is a past paper question you can see in front of you, and I'm showing you the answer. And the answer is dual core is two processors. Parallel processing can take place. Each processor can run a different part of the program at the same time, and some processes can't be split between two processors, so it doesn't increase performance. Does anyone, those of you who are here, does anyone know what that question may have been? Any ideas what that question could have been? What do you think was the question they were voicing in this instance? No takers for that. Well, don't worry, because I will push on. And it was about why having dual core processors. So this question is about having two CPUs, dual core. A core is a CPU, okay? So if you've got dual cores, you've got two processors. So you might think, well, that's twice as fast. But going back to the question, or to the answer rather, some processes can't be split between two processes. Some processes can't be split between two processors, so therefore it won't necessarily be twice as fast. However, it does mean that if the program has been written to take account of parallel processing, then you can do two processes at the same time. All right, I'm going to push on and jump through the quizzing really quickly and talk about today's topic, which is memory and storage. So let's get going. So first thing is, we're going to look at the characteristics of optical, magnetic and solid state. These are three technologies. So as times have progressed, new technologies have been born which enable you to store stuff, okay, to store data. And the original one, and let's use my little pointer here, the original one was magnetic, and then shortly afterwards optical came out, and then finally we've got solid state now. So if you've got a phone, the likelihood is that has got solid state storage in it, this guy here, because it's super fast. That's one of its characteristics, okay? It's got super fast read-write speeds. Another characteristic is it's got a small form factor. It's not very big. Magnetic was the original one. You can see down here. And magnetic was what every single hard drive was before solid state came out. And we will have a look at optical in due course. So what do you need to know as part of this unit? Well, you need to know what primary storage is and what secondary storage is. And sort of going down to the detail, why do we need primary storage? And we'll jump into that later on. And then in terms of primary storage, we have RAM and ROM, and what's the difference between them? What are they for? What's the purpose of RAM? What's the purpose of ROM? And then we're going to look, I'll go down here and have a look at this guy here in terms of the key characteristics you need to know across a number of these different technologies. But then we'll look at why virtual memory is needed. What is virtual memory? Why is there a need for it? And then we'll look at that in due course, okay? All right, so that is done. Next thing, let's jump on here. So we'll have a look first of all at, and we've got secondary storage we need to look at as well. Again, why do we need it? What's the purpose of it? And what are its characteristics in terms of capacity, speed, portability, durability, reliability, and cost? I've got a little mnemonic to save you time so that you can learn those. And what's nice is there is usually a large question worth lots of marks on the characteristics of storage devices. All right, let's jump straight in and have a look at the first one. Now, I'm looking here. Forget for a second that I've got RAM down there. My focus on here is actually thinking about the purpose of it. And without knowing this, really you've got nothing to hang this whole topic on. So what is the purpose of primary storage? Now, primary storage, in terms of what you need to know, means it's either RAM or it's ROM. They're both primary storage. Students always get confused because they think that primary storage is your hard drive, because that's where you save your files, but it's not. That's secondary storage. So in terms of primary storage, whether it's RAM, whether it's ROM, there are certain characteristics to this storage type. First of all, it's built into the computer. It's not something that you attach later on, or you can upgrade it, but it's actually built into the CPU, okay? And the CPU has direct access to it. The CPU needs direct access to be able to run the fetch, decode, execute cycle that we looked at last week. And the fact the CPU's got direct access to it means that it's got fast access to data and instructions, which it needs when it's in it's a 4.6 gigahertz computer, 4.6 billion fetch, decode, execute cycles going on per second. So it really needs to be able to access, read and write really quickly. So that's what primary storage is for. However, it's got a limited capacity. I used the analogy last time of the idea that if you've got a bookshelf with 3 shelves and a bookshelf with 300 shelves, it's going to be quicker to find anything you're looking for with 3 shelves. So the same principle works here. Regardless of the fact that actually the primary storage technology is fast, and it's faster than secondary, the limited capacity means that, yes, it can hold fewer things, but those fewer things it can find more quickly. And also, it has no moving parts, unlike that secondary storage magnetic disk which spins up. It looks like a CD and it spins. It's got a read-write head, okay? So primary storage doesn't have that. So that's a little intro into what primary storage actually is, or the characteristics of it. Then we'll look at the first of the 2 types of primary storage, and this is ROM. We know that ROM stands for read-only memory, all right? First question is, why is ROM needed? And I've got a list there, and I'll give you this mind map, by the way. This is one that I put together, which has got the entire topic there, really with all the facts that you need to know. This is a really fact-heavy topic. I mean, I guess you could argue that all of them are, but actually this is just a series of facts that you need to learn. And we'll talk about ways that you can use mnemonics to learn that, because actually, if you can put this inside your head and you can recall it, this is going to be really good marks for the first 2 sections. Right, what does ROM do? It holds BIOS, the basic input-output signal, okay? And this is a program that checks the hardware is functioning correctly. So when your computer first boots up, the BIOS runs, and the BIOS checks to make sure, is there a fan? Is there a processor? Is there RAM? Etc. Is there an environment into which we can load Windows or Mac OS X or Linux? Yeah, so it's checking to make sure that the computer actually can run an operating system. And then once it's satisfied and it's passed the BIOS and it's gone through all those checks and yes, it all works, then the operating system, let's say Windows for the sake of argument, is loaded into RAM, and then Windows takes over, okay? And you've got the Bootstrap program, okay, which actually loads RAM into the hard drive. So that's what this guy does here, the Bootstrap. All right, so BIOS and Bootstrap. And as long as you know what they do, easy peasy, okay? Then what about the characteristics? Well, read-only memory is what it says in the tin. You read from it, you don't write to it. Now, obviously, you can flash your ROM with a new BIOS, with a new BIOS. I personally wouldn't recommend it because unless you know what you're doing, it's a very surefire way of making sure that your computer does nothing at all. But it's very difficult to do that, okay? It's for experts only, so it can't easily be written to. And also, it's non-volatile. Let's just focus on this word here, okay? Volatile means that this, in terms of memory, if memory isn't receiving any electricity, if it isn't being powered, it loses what's there, okay? So volatile memory, like RAM, when RAM is turned off, when you turn the computer off, everything in RAM is lost, okay? It's all been deleted, it's gone. Whereas ROM, it is retained. And this, by the way, just for the sake of giving you some info, this is what a ROM chip looks like. Not that exciting, but that is what it looks like, okay? So that's your ROM. BIOS, Bootstrap, non-volatile, and it can't easily be written to. Those are your characteristics of ROM. I'll jump straight in. Any questions, by the way, just holler in the comments, all right? RAM, secondary type of primary storage. This little phrase up here, I can almost guarantee that in your exam they will they will ask you something that requires you to use that sentence. What is the purpose of RAM? It is to hold data and programs that are currently in use. So, for example, whether you're watching on a laptop or on your phone or whatever, everything that you are currently watching, doing, using, it's being held in RAM. So without RAM, there's no computing, nothing. If you want to save things, save data, save programs, save files, you'll do that using your secondary storage. So it's really important you've got that sort of dichotomy sorted out here in terms of RAM, that's required to hold the data and the programs that you're currently using. And that phrase just there, that's the one that I've taken from a mark scheme. They want to see it every single time, okay? Next, we've got the characteristics. And again, it is the same type of characteristics as we've got for ROM, but slightly different. So RAM stands for random access memory. The data can be stored and accessed from any memory location, unlike a magnetic hard drive where files are stored contiguously, which means in order. You've got part 1 of the file, part 2, part 3, part 4 in little blocks, okay? Now, it tries to do that, and that's where you get disk defragmentation that we'll come to another day, okay? So it's volatile. So unlike ROM, RAM is volatile. So once you turn your computer off, wherever is in RAM, it gets wiped, okay? And more RAM, if you increase RAM, and they love this question, if you increase RAM, what's the impact? And it means that you can run more applications simultaneously, all right? And it's often easily upgradable. And you get the most processing performance boost by increasing RAM. So it just boosts the PC's performance. You can do more tasks more quickly, okay, because you can run more things at the same time. So imagine in my RAM at the moment, I've got a camera, which is just there pointing at me. That data's got to be held in RAM. I've got my PDF up here. I've got my Stream Deck down here. That's got to be in RAM as well. This little guy here, which is my little box that I can use. Let's try and get it up there. There we go. There's my little Stream Deck. So I can use that to go through my slides, to play my sounds like that. Like that. Okay, so all of these things are being held in RAM. When I turn it off, RAM is emptied. It's the contents of it vanish, okay? So they do like to ask a more complex question about what happens if you increase RAM. Well, things get better is the easy answer, but you've got to pick one of those answers on the screen there, okay? Now we get to something more complex, virtual memory. This is something which students often struggle with, but actually the concept's really simple. We've got RAM. We know that RAM holds all the data and all the applications that you're currently using. Well, guess what? If you increase the number of applications you've got open, so say you've got Spotify and you've got Word and you've got PowerPoint and you've got Google Chrome and you've got something else running, at some point RAM is full. So the computer needs some way of holding that extra data or the extra applications that you're currently using. So this is where virtual memory comes in, and it uses secondary storage, okay? It uses secondary storage, in other words, your hard drive, as primary storage. So the operating system will have allocated a certain amount of your hard drive that can be used as RAM. And this is great, except the problem is your hard drive does not have the same read-write speeds as RAM, which is an issue, because RAM has got electrically fast, has got incredibly fast read-write speeds. Your hard drive is significantly slower. So there's a bit of a bottleneck there. Your computer will run more slowly if you're using virtual memory. Got much slower read-write speeds, we've got that there. And partly because the technology is slower read-write speeds. And when I say slower read-write speeds, I mean reading means opening something up and writing means saving something, read-write, okay? Also, it's slower because it's further away. If you think 2 slides back, I was saying to you that primary storage is actually built into the computer. RAM is slotted in. It slots into a a specific slot that's got really fast read-write speeds, okay, and it's got a direct connection to the CPU. Cache memory we'll get onto later on, that's actually built in as part of the CPU, whereas your hard disk drive, that'll be connected via a cable, so it's going to be slower and it's further away, so the data's got further to travel. Now the last point is this one here, which is that RAM is designed to be written to and read from many, many millions of times more than your hard drive, because your RAM is there to be written to constantly. So it's built, the technology is built to cope with that need. Whereas your hard drive isn't built to cope with that need. Your hard drive is more for casual use of, you save a file. And usually if you save a file on your hard drive, it might be there 2 or 3 or 4 months later. So it doesn't have the same durability. In other words, it isn't as long lasting. It's not as robust as RAM. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's all about primary storage and virtual memory. This question, when it pitches up again 2 or 3 marks, there's half a grade boundary in getting your head around virtual memory. Again, if you don't understand, see there are 10 of you here. If you don't understand, just stick a question in the comments and I will answer it for you. Okay, right. That was virtual memory. This is the mind map that I'm going through, by the way, and I'll put a copy of this on Satchel 1 for you. I also put last week's live stream on there, so and it's got some chapters on it as well. With primary storage, we can tick. We've done that one, all right? Now we go to secondary storage. Just like when at the outset, they will ask you in the exam, what's primary storage for? It's for, what's RAM for? It's for holding all the data instructions currently in use. What's ROM for? Primary storage, that is for holding the BIOS and the bootstrap. It gets the computer started, okay? Secondary storage, this is required and this is in every single exam. It'll be in yours too. What's secondary storage for? It's to permanently store data and applications. So you can run a computer and do all sorts of exciting things with just RAM, but without secondary storage, you can't save anything that you do. So you switch it off and you've got to start again. It's like the Truman Show. Or Groundhog Day, that's a better example, which is a film you should watch. So then we've got this idea. We've got storage device versus storage media, all right? Now I'm going to pop that back there, and I'm going to ask you to cast your eyes down here. This is media, and these are devices, all right? Now, in the case of, let's have a look. In the case of this one, you might not know what this is. This is an audio cassette, right? So back in the day, you would listen to this on a Walkman, what is now a phone, basically. But you'd need a device to play it. You would need some kind of device where you slot the tape in, and that allows you to actually to rewind it, to play it, to fast forward it, and then the device allowed you to plug your headphones in to listen to it. Ooh, my PowerPoint isn't working. Oh, do you know why, Tom? Because I'm a twit. It's working now because I forgot to put this on. Thank you for pointing it out to me. I got so carried away, which reminds me, thanks, Tom. That's really, really helpful what you've done there, because that means that I can go back and just show you these. This was the, I'll send you this because that's far too big to look at. This was the virtual memory bit, okay? This was RAM and this was ROM. But if I send you the mind map at the end of this, but thanks, Tom, that's really helpful because I'd have been waffling on forever with you just staring at my face, and frankly, that's not the best thing to be looking at. Okay, so secondary storage. Right, now let's look at secondary storage solid state. So inside your mind palaces, you should have this idea that in terms of memory, you've got primary and you've got secondary storage, all right? Primary storage, RAM and ROM. Secondary storage, we're now going to look at the 3 different technologies that you need to understand. We've got solid state, we've got magnetic, and we've got optical. Solid state is what's in your phone. Magnetic is what is in a computer 10 years ago, and in school up until about 3 or 4 years ago. And then we've got optical, which is DVDs, compact discs, Blu-ray, all that sort of stuff is solid state, okay? Right, so let's get through solid state and think about this. It uses non-volatile RAM, okay? So we talked about RAM being volatile, but this is a special kind of RAM which is non-volatile. So secondary storage, when you turn the power off, whatever you've got stored remains there. It's also known as flash memory, okay? Examples are solid-state drives, USB sticks, and SD cards. Don't use company names when you're talking about any of these technologies. Talk about solid-state, optical, and digital, okay? Right. Some characteristics. You don't need to know all these, but you do need to recognize them and to be able to produce a few. So I'm going to run through this long list here, and you can see that some of these requires less power. If I actually, hang on a second, if I just make this that size, that should, yeah, that's better. You can now see nearly all of that. Okay, so we've got the idea that the capacity of solid state is between, I'm over here now, the capacity of solid state is somewhere between 256 gigabytes and 4 terabytes. Okay, so it's not quite, hasn't got quite the same capacity. And don't talk about big or small, talk about capacity. It hasn't got quite the same capacity as a magnetic hard drive. But that will increase over time because magnetic hard drives will end up disappearing. However, the biggest bonus with solid state is that it is incredibly fast. It's got really, really, really fast read-write speeds. Again, don't say fast. Say it's got fast read-write speeds. Okay. Then we've got the portability. It's really easy to carry. So that's why you've got one in your phone, because it is incredibly easy to carry. Now these words, portability, durability, reliability, cost, which I've got here, okay, these we're going to use a mnemonic to learn these in a bit. But if you can remember these characteristics and apply them to these three different technologies, solid state, magnetic, and optical, you're there. And they often have a 6 or 8 mark question on this, so it's a really good chance to get yourself some marks, all right? So down here, it's really expensive. The solid state is the Gucci, it's the Versace of storage, okay? Because it's expensive, but it's fast, it's really slick, it works really well, it's hard to break, it's the best, but it's expensive. And also, it doesn't generate heat. It generates a bit of heat, but there are no moving parts, so it generates less heat. If it generates less heat, it means you haven't got to cool it. If you haven't got to cool it, you haven't got to run a fan. If you haven't got to run a fan, you haven't got to use electricity. If you haven't got to use electricity, it means your battery life lasts longer. So it's a win-win-win-win-win for solid state, apart from the fact it's blinking expensive. And when you buy a computer, if you go solid state, the prices are quite eye-watering, okay? And the use case down here is that it's used for long-term storage of programs and data. But we know that because that's where we store our data, isn't it? So that's all you need to know about secondary storage, solid state. And just bear in mind, I'm now looking at secondary storage, and we're looking at an example which is solid state. It's the most recent one. It's the Gucci solution. Right. Let's push on and look at... that's fine, we've done that. All right, secondary storage, I've sort of run through these characteristics, but these are the ones that you need to know. Fast read-write speeds, portable, durable, etc. They're really good, but they're expensive. They're more expensive than magnetic. And that's actually, don't just say it's expensive, say that it's more expensive than. Compare it to other storage types if they're asking you to do a comparison, all right? Now, this is the, thanks to, I think, last year's year 11, this was the this was how we remembered the characteristics. So the mnemonic that you need is crayons speaking Polish during role play. So if you imagine on a desk somewhere near you, you've got those Crayola crayons you had in primary school, and they're all speaking Polish. I don't speak Polish, but let's imagine that we do. And they're all having a conversation in Polish and they're being asked to do a role play on Macbeth, okay? So crayons speaking Polish during role play. It's ridiculous, but I bet you remember it tomorrow. But it even works better if you imagine the crayons there talking to each other in Polish whilst trying to do a Macbeth role play. Ridiculous, but you've got to trick your brain into finding it interesting because some of these facts are a bit dry, all right? So the C stands for capacity, the S stands for speed. So capacity is how much data it can hold, for example, 100 gig. The speed would be 286.8 megabytes per second, so that's the read-write speed. The portability is how easy it is to carry. A portaloo can be put on the back of a trailer, taken to a festival, and put there. It's a portaloo, okay? Durability, how easy it is to break. Reliability, well, how reliable it is, how likely it is to break. So durability and reliability are in the same ballpark, but reliability is really looking at how many read-write cycles it can do before it fails, because all of these products will only last a certain number of times and a certain length of time, and that'll be dictated by how you use it. If you've read and written to it 2,500 times, it'll probably last longer than something's been written to 1,000,000 times, and then it just starts to it stops working entirely, okay? Because it's only good for, like a car. A car's good for 100,000 miles. After that, things start failing on it. It's the same principle. It's just a piece of machinery. It's a device, and it only lasts a certain length of time. And then last thing is price. What does it cost? So if you use that. If you use that mnemonic to remember it, that really is the way to go. And any questions on that are really good. Any questions on that are really easy to answer. So now we're jumping on. We are looking at secondary storage again, except this time we are looking at magnetic, all right? Now, magnetic storage, this is the one that was prevalent, I mean, pretty much everywhere before solid state came out. And it's still very popular, and they're still less expensive to produce than solid state. But that price difference will come out. So we're looking at magnetic. Why is it called magnetic? That's the first question. And I need to know this to be able to learn it. So the reason is the media, in other words, down here, that the surface of the disk, or inside the floppy disk, the tape that's inside here, or the tape that you can see. Let me get my arrow. The tape that you can see, come here. The tape that you can see here, this tape inside the cassette, that is magnetized, okay? So it can hold a charge of either being positively or negatively charged, either a 1 or a 0. So that's how it works. So when it's magnetized, that in binary is a 1, and when it's not magnetized, that in binary is a 0. All right. Now the media is split into tracks and sectors, and each of those have numbers. And so in the file allocation table, that's where, which is like the address book that says this file is stored here, 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 and here, because we know that it's stored in fragments. Okay, that's how it works. All right, so let's look at the crayon-speaking Polish during role play. The C is capacity, so the capacity is high. It's higher than anything else. That's an advantage of magnetic storage. The read-write speeds are slow compared to solid state, but they're faster than optical. It's faster than a CD. It's faster than a DVD. It's less expensive, though, which is why for some use cases, when I say use case, it means doing something for a particular reason. Example, if you're Pixar making animations, you want the fastest workflow you can have. You want fast computers, lots of RAM, you want multiple cores, and you also want fast storage so you can read and write files really quickly. Why? Because animations require a huge capacity of storage. They take up an awful lot of space. They just do, okay? Whereas if you're saving, if you're saving Excel spreadsheets, that takes up far less space on your hard drive. So you could use a magnetic hard drive for that, and it wouldn't be a problem, okay? They're reliable. They're not that durable because they've got moving parts. If you drop a hard drive, it doesn't like being dropped. Chances are it'll stop working or it'll complain quite a lot. It's got moving parts, so that means it requires more electricity, and it generates heat, which gives you two problems. You're losing electricity because it needs it to drive this guy here, to drive the hard drive round. It also generates heat because moving parts generate heat, and then you've got to cool it, which means you've got to drive a fan. Do you see? So all of this kind of comes together. Portability, it's not bad. They've got internal and external, but it's not the most portable because it doesn't like being dropped. And it may damage it when it drops. So they might give you a scenario, and if you look back at past paper questions, they're not really asking for you. They often don't care which device you pick. They'll give you a scenario and say, Alicia is an artist and she wants to save her drawings on a hard drive. What would be your recommendations? And then, so as long as you refer it back to her use case, you can pick any of these, but you've got to make a case sometimes. So the 4, 5, 6 markers for this section are going to be about making a case and showing that you can apply this knowledge to a scenario. So you'll get a couple of marks for talking about the capacity, for talking about the read-write speeds, but then you need to apply what you know to a scenario that OCR dream up. Okay, so that's the next step for you. But if you know all of this, applying it to a scenario is actually relatively straightforward. And again, what's it for? It's for long-term storage of programs and data. Let's go back to here. So now we are on to, we've looked at solid state, we've looked at magnetic, and now we're looking at optical. It is 6 o'clock. We've got 15 minutes to go. Well done for those of you still here. I've got 13 of you here. So optical storage. What is it? Well, it's a disk, and the disk goes into here. You press the eject button there. This little drawer opens, and then the disk is inside there. You know this because you'll have come across DVD players, maybe in your grandparents' house, which is quite scary. So how does it work? You've got a metal disc. A laser scans the surface of the metal disc. The laser's inside this box here, okay, inside this device. So the laser scans that. And again, the disk is divided into tracks and sectors, okay? And then, how's it written to? Well, the tracks contain lands and pits. And a land and a pit is where you've got a little indentation, like a little dent in the surface. And the land is where there isn't a dent in the surface. And the sensor tracks that, so that the laser pings the laser onto these lands and pits, and then it depends what comes back, because if it's a pit, it'll reflect light differently to when it's a land. It's really simple, isn't it? Because, again, it's binary. It's either ones or zeros, because we know these files are saved as ones or zeros. They're saved in binary, okay? So the sensor scans it for the track light, and where there's no reflection, that means there's a little dent in it. That's a pit. That means it's binary, so it's a 1. And where it reflects back properly, that means it's a 0. Okay, clever, isn't it? So that is how that technology works. So that is optical for you. Let's look at the characteristics now. You've got a couple of different kinds. You've got DVD, you've got Blu-ray, and you've got CD. Okay, the capacity is generally quite small, isn't it? If we look over here, we've got the capacity of 4.7 gig for a DVD. A Blu-ray is 50 gig. It's got slow read-write speeds, and it's slower than a magnetic hard disk drive. CD rewriting, which I don't need to go into, that was painfully slow. You can have CDs that you actually write to yourself, but that died away because it just took forever. What about the bonuses? It is extremely portable. You can just stick it in your bag. It's really easy. The problem is it can get scratched easily. And if you've ever played a PlayStation on a PlayStation or any other gaming console that uses DVDs, you would have learned to look after your DVDs because they get scratched really easily, and then the sensor can't read what the laser sends through to it, and it means you can't play a game. Okay, but they're pretty reliable. If you look after them, they look after you. I've got CDs that are 30 years old. They work fine. If you look after them, they look after you. But they do deteriorate over time. Okay, so that's your optical, and those are the characteristics. But again, if you get a question, you need to think about what the most likely answer is. Pick the one you think is best and then use the characteristics within the context of the question. Good. So we've got 3 different types on here. I've got read-only memory, I've got read, and I've got rewrite. You don't really need to know this, but there are a number of different sort of formats and types of optical discs, okay? And we've got Blu-ray and we've got DVD, etc., 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 okay? But actually, that's not within the specification, so you don't need to worry too much about that. But I put it there because it's interesting. Now, they might, again, use case. You might be wondering, why does he keep putting use case down here? The use case is they're going to give you an example, and they're going to talk about Alicia, who's an artist who wants to save her images or her file somewhere. And you're going to think about that use case and consider, and they will say what would be a suitable storage medium to use. And so you'd think, okay, so How many files does she want to store? Is it a lot? Okay, if it's a lot, it's a high capacity, then we're going to think it's probably going to be a magnetic hard disk drive, or it's going to be a solid state drive. Then think about the importance of read-write speed. If it's something that requires really fast read-write speeds, then go for your solid state drive. If it's something that requires slower read-write speeds, then you could justify it by going for a magnetic hard drive and saying it'll be less expensive per megabytes per pound, and it will hold more data. But you don't need hugely fast read-write speeds because of the use case we've got, like storing, archiving files. You don't need fast read-write speeds for that. If you're dealing with animations or video or gigantic files, then you probably do. Think about the size of the videos on your phone when you try moving them. They're huge. So a fast read-write speeds mean you can get these things up on the screen, edit them more quickly. Okay, obviously more RAM will help you as well. So these are ideas of what you could use things for. Blu-ray DVD is down here because distribution of TV shows and movies, because it's got a much bigger capacity. It's more than 50 gig. DVD-ROM is much smaller, 4.7 gig. CD-RW is about 700 megabytes, so that's good for an album. And the same thing for CD-ROM-R, which I doubt they'll ask you about because that technology is ancient now. Okay, so that is the use case and why I keep talking about use cases. Okay, we have got 10 minutes left. Let's see if anyone can answer any questions. A few of you have slipped away now. I've gone to quiz time, so let's see what we get. If you don't answer the question, it's not a problem. But here is the first one. Is it A, B, C, or D? What stores all currently running applications? Is it ROM? Is it cache? Is it RAM? Or is it virtual memory? Does anyone have any ideas at all? Is it ROM? Is it RAM? Is it cache? Or is it virtual memory? We do have Megan. Hi, Megan. How are you doing? Thanks for coming along. We do have C. And you are, of course, completely right. I will give you a lovely sound. Oh, I forgot to play my quiz time music. You've got to enjoy that. I made this. I think it's slightly insane. You were right, by the way. Right, next one. I did that one. Oh, this one. This is different. Holds frequently used instructions and data. What do we think about this one? So it's not all currently running programs. Oh, Dan, I didn't see you there, Dan. Hi, Dan. How are you doing? It is C. You're absolutely spot on. Well done. Thanks for coming along. Holds frequently used instructions and data. What do we think? Now, Dan has come back. We've got Megan who's come back with a B, and we've got Dan who's come back with a B. Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, okay? It is cache. Outstanding. This will get you marks in the exam. These are all 1 markers, okay? These are all 1 mark questions in the exam. What about this one? I mentioned this at the start of it. What is the type of storage to which the CPU has direct access? Is it primary, secondary, or virtual or external storage? What do we think? A, B, C, or D? Type of storage is what I spoke about first of all, actually, which the CPU has direct access to. Any ideas? A, B, C, or D? It's that direct access that means that it's super fast, which means that it isn't one of them. No takers? Okay, no problem. So the answer is primary. Next, type of data that's used to permanently store, I'll try that again, type of storage that's used to permanently store data and applications. They ask this one every single time. Is it primary? Is it secondary? Is it virtual? Or is it external? What do we think? Any ideas? I've got so many of these things. I will just keep ploughing through them. It is secondary, okay? Next. Megan said, yeah, that was that last one. Okay. A magnetic storage device with a spinning platter and a read-write head. That platter, is that a silver platter? Is it a hard disk drive, an optical drive, a tape drive, or an SSD? Well, that silver platter is, of course, a hard disk drive. What has the fastest read-write speeds? Well, it's our little friend, the Gucci solid-state drive. What's the storage that holds the operating system when the computer's turned off? Well, we know that it's not RAM because RAM is volatile. So when you turn the computer off, whatever's in RAM it dies. ROM does not do that. External storage could do it, but actually the answer is your hard disk drive. Okay, I'll just do 2 more and then we're done. What is the storage device with no moving parts? That is, of course, the solid state drive. And last but by no means least, what has a small capacity and is not robust? And again, this is just for you answering these kind of use case scenarios. Small capacity and not robust. It has got to be optical. Okay? Right, guys, well done. We had 15, 16 people. It dropped down a bit. So listen, well done. That is all you need for this topic. So just go away and make sure that you're happy with primary versus secondary, examples of primary, examples of secondary, characteristics of primary, characteristics of secondary, and virtual storage. And that's really all you need. Have a lovely evening, guys, and thank you very much for coming along. And I will see you next week. We're going to be doing binary conversions and character sets next week, okay? So I shall look forward to seeing you then. Okay, bye-bye.